Alright, so today we're going to be talking about ActiveRecord again. We're going to take this a bit further than we did last time, but we want to use a bit of today to kind of review some of the stuff we learned. So, if you look in the project folder, you guys should have for your class. What we did on Friday is 2 ActiveRecords, this is 3 ActiveRecords. It's the same exact copy of it, just to give you guys a progression as our code changes. Right? For the most part, for mod 1 and mod 2, I'll put all of my code in here, so you can always just look for it. Cool? Alright, so let's just look at what we have for a second. So, have our empty models folder. I took out a couple of things. We have our DB folder, config, all of the usual stuff. We have our rake file, which has our console, and it also has line 3 that gives us all of the ActiveRecord commands, or all the rake tasks, I should say. So if we go and we type rake-t, we'll see all the things we have. So what we want to build today, we want to go back to our doctor-patient scenario, right? So I want to do doctors, I want to do patients, and let's add in another one. Let's do, this might seem a little contrived, but bear with me. What else would a hospital have? Doctors, patients, appointments, what else do you guys got? Any other stuff? Nurses. Give me another thing, something else. Conditions. Wards. Okay, a ward. So, all right. So let's go with ward. Let's go with department. Let's do department. Right. So let's think about the relationships we're going to have. Now, a doctor potentially will have many patients. Right. Agreed. A patient potentially will have many doctors. A doctor potentially will belong to a specific department, and a department will have many doctors. True-ish? Now, if a doctor has many patients and a patient has many doctors, how do we accomplish that in SQL? What do we need? A join table. What are we going to call our join table? Appointments or patient doctors or doctor patients, right? What do join tables need to have? Foreign key. 1 foreign key, 2 foreign keys. Cool. So let's start with our patient. So if we need to create our database, or we need to create a table, we have to start with a migration. So let's rake db create migration. We're going to call it create patients. So let's go to our migration. So how did you do like 1 underscore create patients? What did you do?
I did like 01.
01, so you just number them?
Yeah.
So technically there's nothing wrong with that, right? You'll find that you can either do the manual process, which I suppose will be fine. To be honest, we're going to have to use this process as we go along. You'll find once we get into Sinatra and then into Rails, what you'll find is that in the terminal, they actually commands that will do several of those lines for us. The t.string column name, there's actually a generator that does that for us. We'll get there. There's technically nothing wrong in naming them individually. It's more so a question of the timestamp gives us order, right? Cool. And so once we get into our migration, we just have to remember that all the migration does is it's a Ruby file that gives us SQL. Right, it allows us to interact with our database without actually having to write that SQL. So if I needed to create the patients table, we know it would be create table patients, and then we give it ID, etc. Right? Same rules apply. Syntax is just slightly different. So create table, patients, do, and then we define what our columns are going to be. Patient has a name, and our patient will have a condition. Now, once we finish writing our migration, all we have to do is rake db migrate. Now once again, what I want to reiterate here is that schema will always be your best friend. Go and check it just to be sure that everything worked as expected. Once we see this, we know that it works. Why? And if you look at the top, it actually tells you this is a read-only file. Note that so look at line 5. Note that this schema.rb definition is the authoritative source for your database schema, right? It's pretty much telling you that like this should tell you this is what the structure of my database is now. Even though this looks like some Ruby code, it's not code you're going to write. It's not code you're going to have to execute in any way. It gets created for you. All right, so now let's go create the other things. So let's create our department for a second. So create department. Oh no. Yeah, that's gonna be annoying. I'm just gonna fix that. Okay, let's just check. So make sure that's correct. Yeah, I'm just gonna delete this. So I haven't created any models yet. Notice that. I haven't made any models as yet. We're gonna get to that step. So create departments. Cool. Oh my god, did I do it again? Oh my god. Guys, it happens to the best of us. What? Create migration name. Okay. Yay. I'm just gonna create the other ones in the meantime. So create. We need to create doctors. And we're gonna create our appointments as well. All right. So now let's go through. So create department, and you'll find that this sort of stuff is going to become second nature to you. It follows the same pattern over and over and over again. So you just saw me do it. It becomes really easy. Create table, departments, and then department might have a name, and that's it. Right? Doctors, what would doctors have on it? Name, create table, doctors do. But remember, we said that a department has many doctors, and so therefore a doctor belongs to a department. So how do we indicate that? How do I do that? Department ID. And now we have appointments. So same exact pattern, create table, appointments. And what does this need? Right. Doctor ID, patient ID. Now, one thing to note here, when we do the most basic join tables, we leave their name as doctor, patient, patient, doctors. Only at the point where we find that we need a bit more information than this join. So for example, an appointment is not just a doctor and a patient, but it's probably that time of the appointment. It's the context of our join table becomes a little bit more important. That happens in, to be honest, rarer cases, right? It's more likely you get this kind of like doctor-patient scenario, but there are a lot of times where you end up with this join table that's like actually important. Being able to refer to it as an individual entity becomes important to us, right? Otherwise, you find that sometimes we get ignored. So let's just add an extra one, date, time.
So did you say practice it ends up being more common or less common to have a joint table eventually?
So to be honest, I find it's one of those things where your first gut reaction should be to just have it be doctor patients, right? That should be your gut reaction, right? Anytime you're figuring out, I want to relate these two things, and it makes sense for a many-to-many relationship, I think go with that first. But then also, while you're building out your entire structure, start to think, well, wait a minute. Is there any point where I'll want some extra information on this thing? And if the answer is no, you leave it as is, name it doctor patients, move on. But if the answer starts to become, well, wait a minute, each time we make this connection between the two, each instance of that is actually kind of important to me, then start to think of, well, wait a minute, what would I name this? How would I describe this, right? Because remember, we're going to create model files for these things, and you want to have a name that makes sense, right? In the same way we decide how we write classes and describe functions, same thing applies in terms of figuring out, okay, so if this thing does something else, what should I then call it, right? So does that kind of make sense, kind of that distinction? You'll find that sometimes it'll be very easy to leave it as its typical join table name. Other times you'll find that it needs a little bit more context, right? All right. So now, let's run some migrations. Cool. Now, always go back and check. Let's look at our schema file. And we can see that everything seems all right. Departments have a name. Appointments have doctor ID, patient ID, time. Doctor's name, department ID, patient's name, condition. Now what we want to do is go and hook up our models. What I recommend doing here, set them up individually. Write one, test it. Write another one, test it. Okay? Test at each step. A lot of times I find that developers and students will try to build out the entire thing and just be fast. And then finally, after you've built a ton of things, you then want to run your application, and then it breaks, right? Test often, test frequently. That way you have that kind of sanity check to make sure, oh, okay, this model works, this model works, this model works. Not after 30 minutes of coding, it's like, okay, my entire application is kind of broken somewhere, right? So let's start with the basic. Let's do department.rb. One thing to just remember, whenever you're talking about a model, it's always generally the singular, right? Remember, models are classes. They tend to be this kind of like blueprint for how something is going to work. So class department, it's going to inherit from ActiveRecord base. And that's all we need, right? Which is a powerful part about ActiveRecord. Once we inherit from ActiveRecord base, it automatically is going to get create, find, etc. Now, what I want us to do, just to check this out, let's run rake console, and let's see if our doctor works. So doctor, cool, oh, it's department, actually. Department, cool, department.all, nice, department.create, name, oncology. Right, that's spelled correctly. Cool. Now let's check department.all. Boom. Works. Now,
what is this line right after you call it the first time? The call department.connection to establish a connection?
So basically when you define just a class, right? Whenever you type in the class name in your pride, it's going to say, hey, this thing is a class. But there's a bit extra here where it realizes that, wait a minute, I need to tell you that you can't just say department. Let's remind the user that, hey, this is actually connected to a database in some way. So it has to be something more like department.all, department.create. That's all it is. It's really just an indicator that, like, hey, this is an ActiveRecord connected class, right? And like
department.connection isn't something you actually have to.
No, I wouldn't even think about doing that separately. And technically there is a bit more manual setup you can do in ActiveRecord to like say that I want to connect this particular class with this particular thing in your database, in your table. You don't need to do that. From the time you start calling any of the like class methods, it knows to make that assumption, and so you don't have to tell it, hey, I want to connect my class with this specific table. You don't have to, you never will, right?
And it knew to make that connection just based off the fact that doctor and doctors.
No.
Department, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
department and department.
It knows to make that connection by the shared, it assumes that, hey, if you're going to call this model department, then probably the table name is departments, right? That is a convention that seems kind of obvious, right? And so there's a bit of like built-in convention. You'll find that like the deeper we get into this course and programming in general, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And so what that basically means is that there are a lot of other people who made a lot of these decisions for us, right? Some of it seems like just like casually obvious of like, oh, of course I would name it departments, right? But imagine being 50 years ago and being the computer scientist who had to be like, all right, so what are we gonna call a table name? What do we do? And I'm sure there was some other programmer who was like, no, we have to call it departments tables or something, right? Or just singular, and then something eventually wins out.
And it's like table name has an S on it. I'm gonna look for a class without the S.
Yeah, remember when we did dynamic record? Same exact idea. Okay, cool. All right, so this is one big piece of advice I'll always give you guys to look for. Anytime you're working in just ActiveRecord, there's a logger in here that's actually going to make our lives really easy. Now, when we get to like Rails and Snatch and sort of stuff, that's like a bit baked in, but it's something you should always enable. And I'll show you what I mean. So you see how we were able to just like take a look at things, these lines here? Let's try this again. Department.create, name heart, cardiology, yeah? Now, notice kind of that difference, that one line I added to get the ActiveRecord logger. It's helpful for students and just developers in general because it just shows you, hey, this is what happened. This is the SQL call, right? Starts off with just letting you know, hey, I'm about to actually do something to your database. It's been committed, it's finished, right? So always turn that on. If you're in a lab and you don't see it, make sure that's turned on. You just need this line, right? As we get a little bit further into it, you'll find that tends to be enabled by default. But anytime you're like building something on your own, when you guys get into like project mode and you're like working on this sort of stuff, make sure it's there. This gets extraordinarily helpful. And it's just a good reminder of like, oh right, this is the SQL I'm expecting. Sometimes I find that like when I want to like look at some of my associations, especially as they get more complex, sometimes it's easy for me to like actually just verify, kind of as a sanity check of like, wait a minute, this is exactly the SQL I expected, so therefore everything in my ActiveRecord is set up properly. This is example, right? All right, let's go create the other ones. So let's create our doctor. Now, we had talked about this on Friday. When we describe, what we do with our databases and our persistent storage, we said that we do 4 main things. What are those 4 main things again? What's that? RUD. What does that stand for? Create, read, update, destroy. Right? Just never forget that those are the 4 basic things that we will always be doing with databases. Remember that in the grand scheme of things, everything we're doing in programming is always breaking something down to previously solve problems. So even as this ActiveRecord stuff gets more complicated, it's actually just that create, read, update, destroy, over and over and over again, right? So like we're gonna move one step further into some associations, but in the back of your mind, remember, I'm still only ever doing those 4 things, right? Might be an extra step in there, one extra creation in there, something extra, but it's actually only pretty much the same thing. So we're gonna create our doctor. If we exit and we rate console, and I do doctor.create, so we have a doctor. Now, notice that the department ID is empty. We need to fix this. We want our doctors to belong to our department, right? We want to know, what department it naturally belong to. So let's go fix that. Now, whenever you want to create a has-many relationship, it requires 2 things, right? Now, the way to remember how this works if I have a department has many doctors and a doctor belongs to a department, it means that for an instance of a doctor, so at doctor, I should be able to do dot department. And in the same way, if I have at department, I should be able to do dot doctors. Now remember, ActiveRecord will help you as much as possible, but you have to be able to, you have to tell it to help you. And the way we do that is by typing belongs to department. Oh. If I don't write that line, we won't be able to do at doctor dot department, right? Now, even though department ID exists on our table, remember that ActiveRecord, all it knows to do is to look at our table columns and give us those attributes. So right now, if you had to say, give me 3 attributes you know that doctor has based on this. What are the 3 attributes? ID, name, and department ID. And department ID will be what? Just an integer. But I don't want just the integer, I want the department. Give me back an instance of that department. Right? That's what makes sense. In code, that's what I want to do. I don't want to have to get department ID and then search in departments and find, like that doesn't make sense, right? If ActiveRecord is so great, I should be able to do at doctor.department. To accomplish that, all we have to do is write belongs to department. And all ActiveRecord is doing is realizing, okay, cool, you said belongs to department, therefore we're making an assumption that it's department ID on this table. And from the time you try to call dot department, I'm going to look for department ID, look for the departments table, and find the right department. Does that make sense? So, let's test that out.
Well, but how does it know the department?
Sorry?
We didn't tell it what department the doctor's going to be.
Well, in this case, so Natalie doesn't have a department.
Right.
In this case, we have to go and fix that.
Okay.
We're going to fix that. Don't worry. Natalie's going to get a department. Cardiology, maybe? Oh, let's just define Natalie is equal to doctor.list, Natalie.department, ID is 2, Natalie.save. Cool. And I think you guys can kind of see why this logger is super helpful. You're like actually seeing exactly what I'm doing as we go through. Now, provided I have a doctor, by virtue of me having the department ID here and having belongs to department, it means that I can do this. Oh, doctor, right? And so it gives me back an instance of the department class, right? And you might think, well, wait a minute, that's not helpful on its own. What if I wanted the name of that department? I can chain it on and write .name. So let's just break this apart. We have a doctor class. The doctor class has that belongs to department. That allows us to call .department. Once I have an instance of the department, I can then ask for anything else on that department. Cardiology. Now let's look at the flip. As useful as it is to be able to say doctor.department, I might, let's imagine I'm inside the hospital and I'm walking to the department and I want to see which doctors are assigned to this. I should be able to do department.doctors, right? Now, if we think about this entire setup, right, we have a department table, departments, that has name, right? But if I wanted to find every doctor that was in the cardiology department, how would that work? What would I do? Select star from doctors. Where ID equals.
Where department ID of the doctors equals.
Whatever cardiology is.
Where equals department doctor.
Right. So if I wanted to find all of the doctors for a particular department. I need to look on the doctors table. Why? The doctors have department ID. The department table does not know about the related doctors, right? So we look through doctors and just look for that match between department ID and the department I'm looking for. Now, ActiveRecord understands that, and so all we have to tell it to do is has many doctors. What this is doing is it's creating for the department class, it's giving it a new method, .doctors, under the hood, .doctors realizes, wait a minute, you're telling me a department has many doctors. If you're telling me that, it must mean that there's a doctor's table. It must also mean that each doctor has a department ID. And if you set it up that way, and if we hadn't, this would break. If you set it up that way, it then knows anytime you look for doctors, it knows to go through the doctor's table, look for the department ID, and match it to that department's ID. Does that make sense? So let's check it out. So, and the only reason you guys, I don't know if you guys have noticed that I keep closing out the console. The reason for it, every time you open Ray console, it doesn't have all the files loaded in, right? And so I close it just so that when I run Ray console, it has all of my changes. Cool. So let's grab, so cardio, I think that's department.last. So we should be able to do cardio.doctors, right? And it gives us back an array of doctors. Now notice something slightly different. When I do right? Clearly when I do .department, it gives me a singular instance. When I do .doctors, plural, it gives me an array, right? Now if it gives me an array, what does that mean I can do? I can iterate, right? It now means that I can do anything you possibly could have imagined to do with an array, I can now do to that collection. I can iterate, I can map, I can select, I can filter, I can do whatever I want. And that's useful, right? But there's kind of that distinction, right? Department.doctors gives me an array, has many doctors, so it makes sense, I should get more than one. Belongs to department, clearly singular, so it gives me one singular instance, right? Cool, makes sense, we solid? All right, and then also like, you guys can kind of see what's going on, so where is it? Right, select, because remember we were asking cardio.doctors, select doctors from doctors, where doctor's department ID is equal to 2. Cool. Now, we have a little bit more to go. We need to figure out our appointments. Now, we had said that an appointment has a doctor ID and it has a patient ID, right? Well, first we actually need to create patient. Let's do that quickly. That'll take us a second. Patient .rb class patient active record base. Let's create an appointment. Same gem, class appointment active record base. Now, remember, our relationship is doctor has many patients, patient has many doctors, and we have this appointment table that belongs, that has this like, this doctor ID and patient ID. Now, based on what we just learned about the has many scenario, what does that mean I have to do to the appointment table, appointment class? What's that? It belongs to, right? If we just learned that something that has a foreign key, department ID, in this case, doctor ID, patient ID, we just learned that anytime we have this foreign key scenario, we say that this thing, so doctor, belongs to department, right? In the same way, appointment belongs to doctor, belongs to patient, right? That makes sense? That follows? belongs to.
And these are macros just like attribute accessor.
Correct.
Can you do it with a comma then? Like belongs to
Oh.
doctor, comma, patient?
That's interesting. Let's set it up the right way first, and then let's try to break it after. Cool. Now, if an appointment belongs to a doctor, appointment belongs to doctor, what does that mean about the inverse relationship? What is the relationship between a doctor and an appointment? What's that? Has many. A doctor has many appointments. Okay. So let's go. Okay, cool. A doctor has many appointments. That makes sense, right? And what does that mean about a patient and an appointment? The same thing, right? Because we said an appointment belongs to a patient, therefore a patient has many appointments. Okay, cool. That makes sense. But we said that our whole objective here was to set up this many-to-many relationship between patients and doctors, right? So how can I get to doctors? Through appointments. We can see that if I have appointments in the middle, I have doctor over here, patient over here. For me to get from a doctor to a patient, I'm going through appointments, right? We see that, we accept that. So therefore, what this means for us is that our patient has many doctors through appointments. Right? We have appointments in the middle, that's our join table. To get from one side to the next side, doctor to patient, we have to go through appointments. Now, what is key here, one of the things that's key here, look at the ordering of line 2 and line 3. Right? Remember, all these macros do is that they create methods for us. We now know, and you can make the educated guess, that if I have a patient, add patient, I can do dot appointments. Right? In the same way, you can guess that if I have add patient, I can probably do dot doctors. Right? But if you reverse the two lines, if you put line 3 where line 2 is and line 2 where line 3 is, it doesn't actually make sense. And I'll show you to explain. Because when we think of code, remember that code goes from top to bottom, right? Line 3 has many doctors through appointments. Immediately, Ruby is going to say, what are appointments? I don't know what that is, right? Because it gets defined on line 4. Right? So anytime you see those two reversed, you'll see that Ruby will always throw you an error. But you should kind of feel that like that reversal doesn't make sense, right? And a lot of times I find that people write that because they're like so trying to rush through to get their many to many. They're like, okay, I know this is the has many through, and then they're like, oh wait, but it's has many. No, think of it methodically, right? Patient has many of their join table appointments, and therefore that means that a patient has many doctors through appointments. Does that follow? Got it? On the same page? All right. This is where things are going to get a bit interesting. So, there are a couple ways to make these associations in code. So now that we've written has many through, the one thing I suggest you guys do before you ever go any further, if you ignore anything I've told you about running rate console at each step, even if you ignore that entire thing, at this step, please always use the console and test it out, right? It's the best sanity check just to be sure that your associations are right, especially a has many through, right? You want to make sure that it works before you start to write any other code, right? So let's see. So if I have doctor, so I think Natalie is our doctor.last. Okay, makes sense. And we saw already Natalie has a department, makes sense. But does Natalie have any patients? Uh-oh. Let's see, Natalie.patient, undefined method. Okay, so this is actually really good. So we're seeing this problem where it's telling us undefined method patients for doctor ID. Okay. So if I see undefined method patient for doctor, where should I go? Doctor. Okay. What should I do? Finish it off. Has many patients through.
So that's passing it in as just a hash there.
Sorry.
You're doing like your colon.
My colon placement. Oh,
What is, so like the whole thing is a macro, but then once you get to through, what is through in relationship?
Through is being cast as a
1 second. Guys, remember, demystify this whole thing about macros, etc. It's just a function, right? It is almost equivalent of me writing this. So imagine I have, and I'll actually like, so imagine I wrote has, test has many, right? This is my new function. And imagine that it has first table as its first argument, right? But then it has a like optional second argument through, right? And so all this is doing is saying, okay, first let's call, right? That's all it is. It's all that's actually really happening, right? Like demystify a lot of these things. It's like it's not any magic. It's not anything that actually really steps out of Ruby. Remember that ActiveRecord is really just a Ruby file, right? So all it's going to be doing is just Ruby. That's just the second argument, right? You're going to give it a symbol, and ActiveRecord is going to assume, okay, you gave me a symbol for the first parameter, you gave me a symbol for the second parameter. I know that because we're talking about databases, I need to then go look for the patient's table and the appointments table, right? That's all that ActiveRecord is doing. It's not doing any real magic. But you guys have seen the Ruby ways kind of to drop these parentheses. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of that, right? I'll do it for stuff like this because it's just such a shared convention and this is style that everyone follows. Like anytime I do a function that I've written, I'll always just call it with the parentheses. It's part of my style. You can kind of figure out which one you want. Cool. And you'll see some of them are like, it's fairly common to choose one or the other, and you'll see that the documentation will tell you what the convention is. All right, so let's try this again. So let's grab Natalie, and let's do Natalie.patients. Cool. And you can actually see, like, this is what it did, right? This is our friend Inner Join, who we should remember, right? And so it chooses, oh, this is how it figured out for us the patients. But she doesn't have a patient. So let's create a patient. Create. Right? Let's give Lindsay a condition. Sorry, Lindsay. Lindsay has a headache. And I know she's seeing a cardiologist, but it's okay. Whatever, I don't know.
It's not that weird. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Connected, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So we have Natalie, our doctor. We have Lindsay, our patient. And we know that Natalie.patients is an array. So if Natalie.patients is an array, is there some like method or mechanism we've learned to like put things in an array? Shovel, right? We learned that if I wanted to add things to an array, I could shovel it in. So you guys think I could shovel this in? Maybe, right? And instantly we see some things happen. Okay, let's look at the first line. insert into appointment doctor ID, patient ID, and give some information. Because remember, this is just a join table, right? So when we want to show that association, even though we just did Natalie.patients, shovel Lindsay, it added it to the appointments table. So now, if I do Lindsay.doctors, you think it's going to work? Maybe? No? Skeptical? All right. Right? Notice that this is the reverse. Natalie.patients, Lindsay.doctors. We should see Natalie appear. And we do. So what I want you guys to notice is that look at that line where we did Natalie.patients, shovel Lindsay. Right? We didn't change, we didn't change the Lindsay variable in any way. We didn't make any adjustments in any way. But because of the way that associations work, we can ask that question on the flip side, Lindsay.doctors, and it is also aware of the association. Why? Because that entire association is happening through appointments. It allows almost this if you want to kind of stretch the idea of single source of truth for a second, it basically allows us to both ask the same question from one area, right? When we say a patient.doctors, we still look at appointments. When we say doctor.patients, we still look at appointments, right? And that's what allows us to kind of look at it from both directions. So, and let's try this again. And as now just look at what I'm doing for a second. Right? Oh, actually this can't be equal. So it has to be shovel. So I want you guys to take a look at what I'm doing all in one line. Right? So we have Lindsay.doctors. We want to add a new doctor to Lindsay's doctors. But at the same time, I want to create that doctor. Now remembering that the create method not only gives us a new instance, but also saves it to the database, right? Now remember, technically, it's doctor has a name and has a department ID. But I don't want to just do department ID, I want to do department, right? Can I do department 1? Could I have done that? If I tried to do If I tried to do this, why is this wrong? Why is this not what I want to do? What does department point to? A what? Well, so it points at table, but text. So it doesn't point to text. When I do, so like a doctor dot department, what do I get back? An instance of that department. So if I wanted to set the department, what do I need to give it? An instance. So therefore, you can see why I can't just give it 1 or a number. I can't just give it an ID. That's not what dot department is.
Unless you would have assigned 1 in local, right? You could have done like 1 equals.
No, because department, that attribute, is expecting to get an instance of a department, right? Not just a number, not just the association.
You're saying if you had cast 1 as a variable that contained a doctor instance, then you could.
Oh, if there was a variable named 1 that was equal to, yes.
Yeah,
Sure. Sure.
Because I'm wondering now, can I do Lindsay.doctor shovel S equals doctor.d and have the whole thing also saved as a local variable?
Wait, lay it on me. What do you want me to do?
Shovel it in FES, just lowercase.
Just as.
Yeah, or lowercase to have a local.
Oh, yeah.
Equals and then.
No. He's saying, can you one-line it? Can you do what you're doing right now within that call?
Oh, can I do this? Sorry, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Guys, Even if this is possible, please never do it. Never. Never, 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 never. Because, like, look at what I'm writing. I'm saying shovel S, but at the same time, aside for me. Let's not do that.
Nah.
So if you wanted to use department ID 1, could you
I guys, please let's never do that.
Okay.
Let's never do that. I'm fine for one-lining most things, but let's not be the old programmer in me. Things like assignment, do them on their own terms, right? Like, have that be a separate concept on its own, like I'm very clearly setting something equal to something else. Anything else, shoveling, try to write a statement, anything else, willy-nilly, one line as much as you want, but assignment just should be on its own, because I want it to be so clear. Like yeah, let's not do that.
No.
Somebody had a question?
I was going to say, in that, could you just run the method like find ID1?
Yes.
And just
1000%. I could have done Lindsay.doctors, doctor.create, name, Andrew, department, because remember, department needs an instance, department ID needs a number. And I could have found one if I wanted. Because remember, if you try to like change your mind to being the computer for a second, and you look at this line, it should make sense, right? I need to shovel in a new doctor. I want to create a doctor, right? That's going to be an instance I'm going to give it. And I need to give it a department. I can't give it just one, because this expects an instance of a department, but it does mean I can find a particular department, right? Oh, it's Lindsay.
You must have a really interesting headache.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that work though? Not the assignment at the same time, but department ID 1 worked.
Hold on. Truman, you cannot accept that this worked, but you just want us to assign them online. Let's bring it apart.
No, I mean, like when you did the assign on one line, and I recognize don't ever do that again, you just did department ID 1. It assigned him into department 1.
Right, because you're assigning, you were creating a new doctor, so that's why department ID 1. That's like creating the doctor, not looking for a department ID.
Okay.
So, this create asks us to give it a name and a department, because the doctor must belong to a department has many doctors, right? So I just need to give it an instance of a department. It doesn't really matter where that instance comes from, it just needs to be an instance, right?
Right.
Has to be something already saved to the database.
Between department and department ID.
because on the top, like up, way up there, where it's
Okay, because you typed
so you
department.
type the department ID. And
Oh.
then,
I get it.
Instead of department.
This
Now I
is creating.
Cool. All right. So you have a question, and then let's just recap.
Let's say you tried to insert something inside the Lindsay doctor that wasn't a doctor. Would you already know that you can't do that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It seems to me like it's like class, like that's not a doctor. You can't do that.
That's a great question. I'm going to try to shovel in a department into a doctor. Let's see what happens. Oh, yes. That would also not work. Look at this line. ActiveRecord, association type mismatch. Doctor expected, got department.
So it checks.
Check. Now let's try, so one last thing let's try. Now, Lindsay got a ton of doctors. But there's like a small problem in here. Anybody see what's wrong? She has no appointments. Is that true? Does Lindsay have appointments without us checking? Does Lindsay have appointments?
Yeah.
Right? What are all those appointments?
Dr. name and her name, or Dr. ID and her
Dr. ID and her age. So she does have appointments, but what is she missing? Time. Times and nil. Okay, wait a minute. What? Do you guys think I could just create an appointment? Right? I should be able to, right? If I have the appointment class, there's no reason I shouldn't, right? I think it's date now, it would be. Let's double check. Date now. Yeah, it is. Yeah, let's. No. Okay, we're back. Just 1 second. Okay, date new. Yeah, cool. That's gonna be fine. So if I do time and I do date.new, should be fine. So let's grab a doctor first. So doctor is equal to doctor.last, and Lindsay is equal to patient.find by name Lindsay. What's that? Nice. Cool. So we have a doctor and we have Lindsay. Let's create an appointment. So appointment.create, give it a time. Time is going to be date.new. Doctor, give it a doctor. Patient, let's give it Lindsay. Cool. So what we should be seeing here is that because we have this join table appointment, not only did it give us the mechanism of Lindsay.doctors, doctor.patients, etc., but it also allowed us to just create an actual instance of an appointment. We can actually give it a bit more information. We can use it just like any other model. And so now we'll find that this actually makes a little bit more sense. This is an appointment between the doctor at ID3, Andrew, patient 1, Lindsay, for this time.
Monday, January 1st.
Yes.
It just defaults to.
I'm not sure exactly what date.new defaults to. I'll have to look into that one. Let's check something out.
What is the negative 4712? That's part of the time.
I'm not sure. My assumption, to be quite honest, is that the way that we store everything time-based, it uses something called epoch time. And so it's this like time since 1970 something. And so it's this weird number that most times are actually stored in. There's probably a bit of stuff under where like Ruby tries to like make it at least human readable for like this sort of fun stuff. But under the hood, date times tend to be stored as epoch time, right? Just kind of an instant convention. I'm not sure exactly why they chose 1970. That's just like such a totally random thing to do. But there's probably like a very good reason as to like why they did that. Do you guys know?
Probably when they define the spec.
Probably. I don't know. I feel like that's such an arbitrary thing to decide. Like this year is going to be the start of time calculation in programming. Yes, we live in a simulation, guys. 1970 when it started. Apparently, like Elon Musk believes in the simulation thing. So I don't know, guys. Might be true. Now, I want you guys to notice something. What do you guys see that's like a little bit weird and interesting, but like not weird? Choose two doctors. Two of the same doctor. Two of the same doctor. Same doctor. Is that a problem?
So you can have like 2 appointments with the same doctor.
Right. So what does this mean for us? We can have multiple appointments with the same doctor. That makes sense, and from a like logical perspective, it does. But like when I do that line, Lindsay.doctors, that doesn't seem like totally true, right? It's misleading. It is misleading.
And if you did like Lindsay.doctors.count, to be like, how many doctors does she have? That'd be a line.
Right.
It's 4.
Right.
Like I hate liars.
You hate lies. I'm with you. Now, why this is important for us is for us to understand that ActiveRecord will do a lot for us. It will take us very, very far, right? Like when you think about what's going on, there's a lot of stuff under the hood that it's doing for us that we don't have to set up. You just have to create a table and then just say inherits ActiveRecord base, and you get a ton of stuff for you, right? But we have to understand what is happening underneath the hood. So what's happening on the SQL perspective, what's happening with our join table, to understand that in some scenarios it could be misleading. In some scenarios where we have a join table that is appointments, where clearly it made sense to have multiple appointments with the same doctor, we then have to understand that, well, wait a minute, our doctors on our patients might not give us kind of what we think of here, right? To us, that seems to read like, give me, each of your doctors, but in actuality, all that is doing is looking at the join table and bringing all matching doctors, right? Remember, ActiveRecord doesn't know to think for you. The computer is only as smart as you program it to be, right? So don't always default to thinking, well, this is obvious, so it has to be that thing. Computers don't know that, right? Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so let's do a quick review on some of the stuff that we saw at its base level, very, very base level. Once you have a table, once you inherit from ActiveRecord base, a ton of those things work out of the box, right? So we have, and if we check our department for a second, let's ignore this line for 1 second. Once we have just this, ActiveRecord will give us a ton of stuff. It will allow us to create, right? Back doctors, I don't know, right? That does 2 things. It creates an instance as well as saves it to our database. It also allows us to actually start querying it. We can grab all of them. We can grab the last one. We can find it by its ID. We can also find it by anything else. So we have this find by method. Once we provide it with a key to look for, it will look it up by that attribute. So in our case, name. So name, and we tell it what we want to search by, cardiology. So department. Right? Now, just realize that you can fill this in find by for anything else. So for example, we have a patient. Patients have a name, but they also have condition. We can find by condition. I think we said headache, right? Right? Notice here that if it was doesn't match, right? Gives back a nil. That kind of seems stupid, but like it should make sense to you. Like, okay, it is only so small. This is a string matching these two. It's not the same, right? You got that? Cool. So at its base, we can create, we can read. I can always go and change something. So provided I read this patient, once I have an instance of that patient, I can access its attributes, condition, name. Now remember all the stuff we learned with adder accessors. In the same way that I can read information from it, I can change things about it. So I can do patient.condition, and she's now cured. But keep in mind, this is just an instance of a patient. So when I do equal cured, does that mean it's changed in the database? No, it's not. If I go back and try to do this, let's call it other patient. It still finds that patient, right? Because it hasn't been saved. right? So what we should be seeing here is kind of that difference between an instance, something that lives in memory, versus something pulled from the database, right? So if we change something, we change the patient to being cured, we have to now go and do patient.save, right? So if you change an attribute, just remember you have to save it. In the same exact way, we can update it. Update will do change in memory and save in one step. So if we update condition to out of hospital maybe, and you guys can see, and this is one of the reasons I told you guys to like always put in the logger. When we just did patient condition equal cured, you could see that it did nothing for us, right? When we update, right. Cool. And so finally, now that our patient is out of the hospital, we can destroy. So we do patient.all. Yeah, we just killed him. Okay, cool. So after we got through our basic create, read, update, delete, we started talking about this association idea. Remember, the easiest way to remember some of this stuff is that if something has a foreign key, right? So a doctor had department ID. Once it has a foreign key, the way to express that is that so thing on the left, right, belongs to thing on the right. Doctor has department ID, therefore doctor belongs to department. Why do we even bother to do that at all? Because it then allows us to do at doctor.department. We want to be able to write that in code. If we're using ActiveRecord, if we're using an ORM, we just want to be able to do that. Then, once we do the belongs to, there's the inverse that we can do. Has many, right? Because presumably, if doctor has department ID, several doctors can have the same department ID. So if I'm looking at a department, I should be able to do .doctors. Now, just remember, anytime you see this, like, and you guys will probably forget to do some of this hooking up, you'll probably make your tables correctly, and then in console, try to do doctor.department or department.doctors, and all it's going to tell you is undefined method. And all that is saying is that, hey, you have not told me that this method should exist, right? And so from the moment you see that, the moment you see at department.doctors undefined method, it just tells you go into your class and write has many doctors. Cool. And then finally, once again, same rules apply. Appointment had foreign key, doctor ID, patient ID, so clearly belongs to doctor, belongs to patient. Then for our patient, remember the inverse, patient has many appointments, and in the final step, a patient has many doctors through appointments, right? Now remember, once again, same kind of jam. If you don't do this on the flip side, right? So if I just do it on patient, but don't do it on doctor, doctor will not know about patients, right?
Patients will still know about that.
Patient will still know about doctors, right? So always do it, has many doctors through appointments, and you're good to go. You guys have any questions? Last minute thoughts? No? Does this make sense? All this ActiveRecord stuff. Isn't this 1,000 times easier than writing SQL? Yeah. This is literally, and this stuff, even though it's like very Ruby specific, is actually quite common in programming. Every language, every framework has a variant of ActiveRecord. It's probably not going to be the exact same thing with inheriting this and doing this exact same step, but nobody who is like using a big enough framework ever actually writes their SQL or Mongo, that sort of fun stuff. As your questions get bigger and bigger, as you want to do bigger queries, like remember that document we went through, those questions? As those things get a little bit more complex, ActiveRecord will not perform as well, or like it becomes harder and harder to write the right query, and that's when we go back to writing SQL. So that being said, it's important for you guys to understand the underlying SQL and like not forget that it exists, but at the same time, rely on ActiveRecord for most other things. Cool? All right, that's pretty much it for today. I want you guys to just keep